able to watch it. Okay, and then I'm going to share the screen. Which one is it? Not that one. Bear with me. Okay. Can you guys see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I thought I'd start with actually. Okay, so I just want to start with part of the lecture and talk about how to figure out your inventory and, more importantly, your cost of food sold. So if you guys remember back to when we talked about food cost percentages, in order to figure out what your food cost percentage is, you need to figure out what your cost of food sold is. And this number doesn't come by easily. It's a multiple step process. And so this slide shows you that. So you're going to start with your opening inventory. With your opening inventory, that's always going to be the closing inventory of your previous month. So every month, your business is going to do an inventory. At the end of the month, that closing inventory is the following month's opening inventory. So you're going to take, it's April now, so let's do, if we were to figure out what March's was, we would take February's closing inventory. That would be March's opening inventory. And then we would add the purchases that we made throughout the month of March. So all the purchases. And that would give us our total available for sale. Okay, does that make sense so far?
Yes.
Okay. Then you're going to subtract, at the end of March, we're going to do our closing inventory. That's going to be all the product that we have left in inventory. We're going to subtract that from our total available for sale. So you have your
Every month. We do the closing inventory every month, right? The end of the month.
Every month you should do inventory. Some places will do it on a weekly basis or bi-monthly basis, but on the minimum, you should always do inventory every month. Otherwise, you won't be able to tell how you're doing, and you won't be able to be profitable if you're not doing a monthly inventory, because you'll have no idea what your food cost is if you don't do it. Okay, so end of March, we do our closing inventory. That is going to give us our cost of food issued. This number right here. Whoa, hold on. Now I'm messing this up. Okay, here we go. Cost of food issued. Now, a lot of times you're going to be cooking. So if you're dealing at a restaurant, so when I worked at the tap room, we would get liquor and wine and beer for a lot of the food that we created. So like we had a fish and chips batter that we used beer. We used the tap room ale beer for part of the batter. So that would be all of the beer that we would use. So if we use, say, throughout the month, we might have used 10 pitchers of beer. Well, that beverage cost has to be given to the kitchen. So you're going to add all of your kitchen liquor that you're using, because that's being purchased by the beverage, and then it's being moved to the food cost. So if you're making a nice rich red sauce and you're putting wine in it, if you're doing any type of you think of like all the recipes that Chef Jorge has you make, a lot of them have vermouth, wine, all of that needs to be added to your food cost. Okay, so you're going to add transfers from other units. So these would be, so think back, we're still at Pebble Beach at the tap room. We ran out of French fries. However, Stillwater Bar and Grill across the hall has French fries. So we're going to transfer the French fries from Stillwater Bar and Grill's food cost to the tap room's food cost. Or we ran out of steaks at over at Spanish Bay. And so therefore Spanish Bay's restaurant, let's say Roy's, is going to transfer them to the bench at, or transfer them to the tap room. Okay, so if you are transferring out, you are going to subtract. If you were transferring in, you were going to add. So transferring in means you're getting more food from somewhere else, which means you're going to add to your food cost because you're spending more money on the product. If you're giving it away, if you're transferring it out, you're going to subtract because you're taking food off of your food cost. That food that's being sent to the other unit shouldn't count towards your food cost. Okay? That's going to give you your subtotal. Then we go to the next column, and that's food to bar directs. So this is going to be almost every single bar has nuts or snack mix, all the different. Hi. So anytime you transfer food to the bar, that needs to go towards the bar's cost. So the bar cost would be, or the beverage cost. So other things, can you guys think of other food that you might send to the bar? What about a Bloody Mary? What kind of food comes with a Bloody Mary?
We have tomato juice, maybe some celery,
Yeah.
any other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've been to some of the more gourmet restaurants, their Bloody Marys might even have a hamburger. It might have a strip of bacon. It might have definitely the tomato juice, but like all of the different condiments, lemons, limes, all of that, those are food that is being used to produce the beverage. So therefore, the food needs to be subtracted out of the food cost and added to the beverage cost. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to subtract transfers to other units, anything else that we're sending out. So remember, anything we're sending away, we're subtracting. Grease sales. So if you're selling grease, and sometimes restaurants are able to do this, if you sell the grease, you're going to subtract that cost. Steward sales. So steward sales are not done very often, but that is when if you're a mom and pop restaurant and you get, because you're a restaurant, you get a really good deal on your products compared to if you're buying it at the store. If one of your servers wanted to buy, get a case of steaks for a big family party, and you could get it for your cost, basically the money from the sale of the steaks is not, or the price of the steaks that you're selling to your staff is not going to go towards, count towards your food cost. That's going to be separate because you're going to sell it for the same price that you paid for it. So it's not going to count towards your food cost because you're not actually making the steaks, and it's not part of your revenue stream. Not all places do that, but sometimes they will.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So basically what you're saying, we have somebody that we want to sell those like steaks at the price that we have it on the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Will that mess out our account when it comes to make the inventory? I know it's not gonna come out through us.
No, so that's why you're subtracting it right here. So
Okay.
because it's otherwise what's going to happen is it's going to count towards your cost of food sold because it's gone. So it came in with your purchases, but it's gone before your closing inventory. And so if you don't subtract it from your counting towards your inventory, it's going to look like your food cost is going to increase.
Okay.
All of these changes from the cost of from the cooking liquor all the way down to the gratis bar and promotional expense, all of those are affecting your food cost negatively or positively, but shouldn't actually count towards your food cost or your cost of food sold. So you're basically taking it out of the equation. By subtracting it, you're taking it out of the equation so that it doesn't affect it. Okay, so gratis to bars, that's if you have, some restaurants will have food that they send as part of a happy hour promotion. So I've been to, there's a restaurant in Salinas that sometimes they do a happy hour where they have a charcuterie board. Well, that charcuterie board is given away for free. So that's a promotional expense, and they're not actually selling products So you're not getting any revenue for it. So if you count that towards your food cost, then it's not affecting it. It should be counted separately. You'll have a separate column in your inventory, excuse me, in your invoice income statement that talks about promotional expenses, all of these different expenses. You'll have a special column for, but this is specifically talking about your food costs, your cost of food sold. This is so important because you can control, all of these are controlled separately. So what you're trying to figure out is how much money I made in food revenue and how much it cost me to sell that food for to create that revenue. So if I'm giving away food, I'm not getting money, so therefore it shouldn't count towards that particular line item. That's going to give you your cost of food consumed. Now, depending on the properties, some properties have employee meals, some don't. But if you are using some of your food to create employee meals, then you need to subtract that out as well. So you're going to subtract out your cost of employee meals, and that's finally going to give you your cost of food sold. Now, some places are going to, the employee meals is a complicated part of this, and every business has a different way of dealing with it. Some will cost out one meal and then just multiply it by how many staff they have on any given day. Some will do an average per day, per shift, and say this is how much we're spending on employee meals. Some won't do employee meals at all. So it depends on the property. But in general, because once again, you're not getting revenue for the employee meals, then you wouldn't it shouldn't count towards your cost of food sold. Questions on this? Okay, so I wanted to show you how to do the exercise. So with your, for 8.2, you're gonna start with your opening inventory. And if you scroll down, I gave you all the information. So last month's closing inventory, remember that's the same amount as the closing inventory of the previous month is this month's opening inventory. So let me make this a little bit smaller. Last month's was 5,320. And your purchases this month were 24,560. Total available, and we're going to do an equal sign, and then you can click on each box and then do the plus sign. And I've got the formula right here. Opening plus purchases equals total available. Now your closing inventory. This month's closing inventory was 4,590.80. So your cost of food issued. Here it says total available minus closing inventory. So it's going to be the equals total available minus your closing inventory. So this is how much you're starting with. So you've got the $25,000 of food issued to the restaurants that's been used. So far, so good? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay. Now your cooking liquor. Remember, this is what you're adding to. We spent $183 on alcohol to cook our food with. And we're going to add that. So we're going to do equals 25,000 plus the 183. So now this is how much money food we've used. Now the food to the bar. We sent 75. For some reason I have it over here. 75.6.
On the next cell. Oh.
And so we're going to subtract this. Steward sales is going to be $365.50. And right here, I have a formula already built in that shows you it's going to add all of this up. Promotional expense, $87.30. So if you look at this number, this is the total of these three. The food to the bar, you're taking away. Your steward sales, you're taking away. Your promotional expenses, you're taking away. So all of these, the 528, you're going to subtract. So we're going to take our subtotal and we're going to subtract all of these, the food to the bar, the steward sales, and the promotional expenses. Now we're going to look down at the bottom. It's going to say cost of employee meals is $1,365. And here at the bottom, we've got our costs of food consumed minus employee meals equals the cost of food sold. Okay? So I'm going to copy this down, 23,578.8, because I'm going to copy this, because in order to do 8.3, I need to know what my food cost is. So I'm going to go up here. So here's my food cost divided by my food sales. So
Food cost
divided by food sales is 35%. Do you see how I did that?
Mm-hmm.
So food cost divided by food sales is 35%. Now, if you look back at this page, you have, in looking at these numbers, there's no way to know if this is a good number or a bad number. In looking at these two numbers, there's no way to know if these are good or bad numbers until you get to the percentage. Now, we've talked before, would you think 35.5% is a good food cost?
Right.
I don't, because this is just a food cost. You need to add all the expenses like the rent.
But that's why we start with the food cost because that's something we can control.
That's
And
a normal.
So,
More than 34%. This is good in terms of food expense.
the reality is, it's okay. Most restaurants now are working between a 20 to 30% food cost. So 35 is a little high. 35 means, so if you were to make $100,000 this month with a 30% food cost equals
$70,000. That one.
Let me make that much money is being spent on your food cost. If you were going to do 30, and then let's do 25. Just show you the difference.
But if somebody's paying $30,000 rent a month, I don't think even if they make this amount of money a month, I don't think they can really make a profit, right?
So it depends, but let's see here. Did I do this wrong?
Man, I know restaurants that they pay $30,000 a month in Carmel, which is ridiculous, but they have to pay.
So this is how much money your food cost is. So if you look at it here, there's a big difference. By changing it from 25 to 35, you're saving $10,000. Now, if you change this and instead we are making 500,000, Now you're looking at $50,000 that you've spent extra on food. Now, remember, everything that you spend on food means that you can't spend on, like Fanny, you mentioned rent and labor. Right now, labor is a lot. If you look at all the restaurants are still going to have to pay for their food cost. Like we got takeout for lunch today for the first time in a long time, and the restaurant, they still had to pay for. I got a hamburger. That hamburger, they still had to pay the same food costs that they would have if I sat in the restaurant. However, they're paying less labor because they have less staff working. They don't need to have all the servers working the floor. They need to have one person taking orders and the cooks. That's it. So their labor is something that they can control and they can decrease, but they still have to pay rent. They still have to pay all of the other expenses, like they have to pay for china glass and silver. Now they're having to pay for a lot more to-go containers. They might be paying more for their food costs because some of the prices have gone up. So you think of all the different things that they can control, but food cost is one of the easiest ways to control your revenue and control your costs and control your expenses. Rent's considered a fixed cost. Fixed cost means that it doesn't change. Or if it does change, it changes on a very slow basis. And it's also not affected by sales. So your water bill, your electric bill, your rent, your insurance, all of that is pretty fixed. As a manager, you really want to focus on items that you can control, things that you can fix right away. Does that make sense?
All the restaurants, at least in Carmel, they pay percent. They pay the rent, and if they make more than that, they pay like 6 or 7% on the top. I know a lot of restaurants that also, if they pay $10,000 a month, like in the summer, if they make more than that, the landlords have access to the account, and then they can see how much money they make, and they pay more rent.
Yeah, and a lot of that depends on property to property and how you've negotiated the deal. And so, but because the land is so scarce in Carmel, it's much more, the owners of the property has a lot more control than they do in other places. Okay, so any questions on this?
No, I think I got it.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna stop the video. All right, stop share. And